Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday afternoon. Thank you so much to everyone for being here with us today. We have a very exciting webinar coming up for you. As you know, go ahead and just post in the chat there. Let us know where you're coming from. Winnipeg, Victoria, welcome. We will start in a couple of minutes, so you have some time to let us know where you're coming from. Grab your tea, grab some water, close your office door, your classroom door, wherever you may be. New York, Winnipeg again, welcome. Wisconsin, thank you all so much to all of you for being here today. We will be talking about child care safety at your center, a very, very big topic. And is your center prepared? A lot of meaningful, helpful information will be coming out of today's webinar. So thank you so much for being here today. We will start in just about 1 minute or so. We'll let a few more people roll in. Philadelphia, Curve Lake, welcome everybody. Toronto, Mississauga, I am in Toronto as well. Bit of a gloomy day out there for us today. More Toronto. Thank you so much everyone for being here. In just about 30 seconds or so, I will go ahead and get us started. So we have our full hour today to dive into childcare safety and is your center prepared? So again, grab that water, close those doors, enjoy the calming music for a few minutes. Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. If you're just rolling in, please still go ahead and post in the chat where you're coming from. We love to see who is here with us today. I will go ahead and get us started so that we can maximize our entire hour together. First things first, before we dive into a bit of our housekeeping, we do want to touch base about what's going on at Hi Mama and with all of our social channels. So I'm going to bring our awesome co-host Kaya on to chat a little bit about that.
Thanks so much, Maddie. Super excited for today's session. I just wanted to pop on here and let everyone know that we're running a really special December. We have so much going on our socials. So come check us out, come say hi. Right now in our private Facebook group, I'm just gonna post it in the chat for y'all. In our Facebook group, we are sharing all of our amazing holiday doors, winter doors. There's so many cool ideas going on there. So make sure you join. It's a private group for educators all around the world. We want to see what you're doing in your classroom. Also, if you can't get enough webinar content on Thursdays, every Tuesday in our private circle time group, we are hosting little mini lunch and learn webinars too. So if you want even more webinar content, come say hi to us at 12 o'clock every Tuesday for the month of December, 12 o'clock Eastern time, that is. I will see you there.
Thanks so much, Kaya. Okay, so first things first, as many of you know, unless this is your first time joining our webinar, we just like to make sure that we all know that we are not the faces of personalized legal or financial advice for your center. We really hope that you come to our webinars today and take away some really helpful tips and tricks and techniques for your classroom. But if you are looking to make any big changes, we do recommend that you consult the right people, whether that be a licensing rep or a legal or financial advisor to support you with those changes. We are now going to do a quick listen to our land acknowledgement.
Hi Mama acknowledges that our main headquarters is situated in Toronto, Ontario, on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto itself is a word that originates from the Mohawk word takaranto, meaning the place in the water where the trees are standing. As participants and guests in today's webinars, we are coming together from many different places around the world. We encourage you to learn about and acknowledge the land from which you participate.
And our diversity and inclusion statement.
Hi Mama is committed to fostering an inclusive and welcoming environment for our employees, customers, and community. Hi Mama welcomes and celebrates individuals of all backgrounds, orientations, and identities. Our Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee aims to ensure we provide a safe environment for everyone to thrive while bringing their authentic selves to work. Our mission is to promote an inclusive workspace for all employees through education, discussion, and celebration of our differences. Embracing these differences while coming together with a common purpose is what makes our team extra special.
And a couple last housekeeping pieces. This session is recorded. If for any reason you do have to pop off, do not worry. We are recording and you will receive the recording of the webinar by early next week. We are also recording with the closed captions on. If you would like to enable that for yourself right now, you can also go ahead and click the CC tab on your Zoom. In regards to certificates, we will be sending out a certificate to everyone who has attended today's live session. You will receive the certificates again by early next week. And if you are having any issues with your Zoom, we have attached the link here, support.zoom.us. You can go to their site and they will be able to help you with their product. And Hi Mama, if this is your first time here, if you have not heard of Hi Mama before, welcome. We're super excited you are here today. Who are we? We are a childcare management software. So on top of the amazing webinars that we run on a weekly basis, we also support childcare centers with their parent communication, photo and video sharing, portfolios, assessments, billing, you name it. If you would like to learn more, you can pop onto our website and schedule a demo with someone at our company so you can see everything that Hi Mama has to offer. If you do sign up with Hi Mama, or if you already are a Hi Mama customer, we do have a wonderful, wonderful support team who will help you with the entire process as you use Hi Mama at your center. I used to be on the customer support team. I can absolutely speak for the rest of my colleagues on that team that they're a wonderful group of humans who will be able to support you with any issues you have. On top of that, we have a ton of resources available for you. We have weekly podcasts that go out, hundreds of activities online to support you and your educators in the classroom. We have articles, and we also, of course, have our webinars. And on top of that, we are a B certified company, meaning that as we support our customers and the educators on a daily basis, we are also working to actively make a difference in the fields that we work in. And some final big news before we hand it over. If you missed this announcement last week, we are hosting our second Early Learning Summit. It is completely free. It is on a Saturday so that we can accommodate everybody's schedules as much as possible. We have an amazing lineup of speakers coming to chat with us for this day-long event to enhance your learning, enhance your center, your classroom in 2022. I will be there. I highly recommend that you sign up so I can see you there as well. Kaya will post a link in the chat so you can sign up right now. And finally, your host. Again, I'm probably still a bit of a new face to some of you who have been on our webinars for a long, long time. My name is Maddie. I'm one of the early childhood educators here at Hi Mama. I am also our customer advocacy specialist, and I am now the host of the webinars as our amazing host, Ria, is going on maternity leave. I am here with my amazing co-host, Kaya, who was popped on earlier. Kaya, did you want to pop back on and share any fun fact about you this week?
Fun fact, I'm in the office and the fire alarm is going off. It's not very fun, but I'm here for support if you need me. Hopefully, if I'm not here, Ria's here.
Oh no. Okay, well, looks like I ended up making a good call to stay working from home today. And finally, last but not least, our special guest, Andy and Ron, do you want to pop on?
Hey,
welcome,
everyone.
Andy and Ron. We're so excited to have you here today. Before we get started, why don't you just share a little bit about who you are and a fun fact about you today?
Well, hi, my name is Andy Roszak. I live here in Washington, D.C. A fun fact, let's see, I became a first-time father this year. So we are getting ready to celebrate our 11-month-old daughter's first Christmas. So a lot of excitement here in the Washington, D.C. area.
Congratulations, Andy.
Thank you.
That's kind of hard to top. My name is Ron Roszak. I guess the fun fact is I'm from Chicago, Illinois. I see a bunch of people already signed in from Chicago. I flew out here to DC to be with Andy yesterday so we can do this presentation together.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, well, I am going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I will hand it all over to you. Thank you so much.
All right. Let me share our screen here. Here we go. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I've had the privilege to present on a couple of these Hi Mama webinars, and it's always a treat to have so many wonderful people and to have such great discussion. So we're going to talk for about the next, I don't know, 40 minutes or so about some preparedness trends, things that we're seeing out there throughout the country, throughout the nation, quite honestly, and really try to get your program as prepared as possible. So we are from the Institute for Childhood Preparedness. We are an organization that works full-time on emergency preparedness, response, and recovery issues for the early childhood sector. My name again is Andy Roszak. I was a firefighter paramedic for about 10 years and then went to law school. So I am also an attorney. And I've got along with me Ron, who's a 20-plus year veteran of law enforcement. Ron does all of our site security and safety trainings. He's our senior safety advisor, and he comes at things from the law enforcement perspective, the safety security, and we've been working in early childhood education now for, I guess, almost 6 years. So really excited to be here and share some stuff. We're going to keep this conversational because we really want to engage with everybody. So if you have questions as we go along, go ahead and throw them in the chat box. We are monitoring that, and we'll try to answer them kind of in live real time. Also, we know there's a lot of need for preparedness. We have written 3 books that are out there. You can find these on Amazon or find them on our website. They deal with preschool preparedness for an active shooter, which was a Book of the Year finalist. So that was very exciting for us. Preschool preparedness for an emergency, and also preschool preparedness for after the disaster. So we thank our good friends over at Kaplan and Griffin House for allowing us to publish those books in partnership with them. And if you want to further your reading, or if you're looking for a last minute stocking stuffer, there you go. So we'll talk about a few things. And again, we were asked to talk about some trends that we're seeing in North America. And sadly, one of those trends when you look at worldwide is that disasters are on the rise. And certainly, you know, it's no mystery. I think we just have to look at the local headlines in the last couple of weeks, and we can see just devastating weather events and acts of violence and all sorts of disasters that are out there. So not only are disasters happening more, but sadly, they're costing a lot more too. And you can see the chart there at the top right is the cost of these disasters over time. And you can see just every year they go up and up and up. And you know that really hits us where it counts, in the pocketbook, right? And the sad fact of the matter is that 40% of businesses do not reopen after a disaster. And I've worked on a lot of these disasters. I've been hands-on, boots on the ground, helping childcare programs rebuild and reopen. And I just can't really even put into words how important the work of early childhood learning is to communities every single day. So in some cases, you have that initial disaster, whether it be a flood, a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, and then you have this secondary disaster because we lose this really valuable and really needed community asset. And I'm talking about our early childhood programs. So really our goal in life is to get you as prepared as possible, to help things reopen in as quick a way as possible, and to get you prepared, because what I don't want anybody to do is to walk into a situation like this. And this is a photo I took of Banana Cabana, which is a childcare program down in the Florida Keys. And this is how I found it after the hurricane. Just completely devastated, completely ruined. And I tell you what, the time to start your emergency planning is not when the disaster hits, right? You're very stressed out. You're not thinking clearly. You've got enough on your mind without trying to formulate your emergency disaster plan or make contacts with those folks that can help you in your community, those types of things. So everybody should be prepared. We want to get you prepared, because when you come into this, if you're prepared properly, in just a few short months, you can go from this to this and be completely restored, completely reopened, and back to serving the community that is just also important. And, you know, a big part of what we do at the Institute is make early childhood professionals prepared, because as everybody on this webinar knows, it's not just about us. It's not just about our livelihood and what we do as adults. It's because we were entrusted to care for those kids. And Ron, those kids, they look up to us. They look up to us in every single situation, whether it's a day-to-day operation or a disaster. And if we're not prepared, we're going to let them down as well.
Right, exactly, Andy. And that's why this is one of my favorite quotes. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's not for me. But I use it all the time in my classes, because when you have a disaster or any kind of emergency situation, all the little ones that we're caring for, they're going to look to us to see how we react. And if we act, like all excited, running around like chickens without heads, that's going to transport over to the kids. They're going to do the same thing. So what we want to do, the biggest thing we want to do is remain calm. The best way to remain calm is to practice, to train, so that when these events happen, we kind of already know a little bit what to expect. We already know how to react, and that's why we kind of changed our saying here a little bit. We used to say, practice makes perfect. Well, now we've kind of changed it to basically say practice makes prepared. So we want everybody to be prepared for any kind of emergency situation. We kind of know what to expect. We kind of know what to look for, and we certainly know how to react. And that's going to play down to how our kids are also going to react when they see us acting calmly, and they're like, this is like something that's more routine than just a disaster that it actually is.
Yeah, and you probably have heard the term, muscle memory. I mean, that's really what we're looking for to kick in. You want to be practiced. You want to be prepared. You want to be almost second nature. So when things are happening that are stressful or out of the ordinary, you're not trying to think through and process this information for the first time. So that muscle memory kicks in, and that's going to give you a much, much better response. Now, obviously, there's a lot of, physical things that happen to our facility. Roofs get, ripped off, and drywall gets moldy because of floodwaters and that. But there's also a tremendous amount of social and emotional impact that these disasters bring. And this is some stats from Joplin, Missouri. They had a horrific tornado a few years back. But you can just take out Joplin, you can plug in any community that's went through a disaster, and you see a similar trend. And I will say, going through the last 2 years of COVID, we've also seen these trends really tick up and really continue to rise. So, we're talking about not just the disaster that impacts your home and your belongings and that's, shelter that you may have, but we're also talking about increases in domestic abuse, increases in domestic violence, increases in suicide, increases in substance abuse, all bad things, especially when we think about kids. And, what I think a lot of people don't understand, and we spend a lot of time with people that make laws, legislatures, but we also spend a lot of time with first responders. And what we always try to get across to them is that, this isn't your school, right? People always think about, the kids, they learn so much when they get into school. Well, the bottom line, as everybody on this webinar knows, if we start talking about traditional school, first grade, second grade, third grade, high school, we all know that we've pretty much missed the ball by that point, right? Because 90% of a child's brain happens before the age of 5. At no other time in your life do you have this rapid amount of growth. I mean, some folks that study this say that you're getting over 1 million synapses, 1 million brain connections a second. So it's just, so important that children are in a stable, safe, comforting environment during these first couple of years of life, because as you look across all major outcomes, everything that really determines who you are as an individual and whether or not you're going to be successful or not as an individual, you can see that they all really take shape in those very formative years of that 0 to 5. And, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn to say historically, emergency preparedness, disaster funding and whatnot is pretty much overlooked the child care sector. A lot of the efforts are focused on high school or focused on elementary school or focused on colleges, but we don't have a lot of good funding and good materials and good information and resources for our age group. And that's really the major reason that we started the Institute, was to help fill that void and fill that gap. So, not only that, but we also have kind of an uphill battle, and I'll ask Ron to talk about some of this, but we also have kind of an uphill battle when it comes to just national and perspectives on emergency preparedness. So here's a little chart that we're going to throw up. And Ron, I mean, one thing that jumps out to me right off the bat is that 51% of folks believe that help will come in under an hour.
Yeah, that's right, Andy. And that's why this training makes it so important for people to realize that, even more so today with 911 delays happening across North America. I don't know how many cities we've worked with and how many police we've talked to that citizens in their town dial 911 and they get put on hold. We just recently had a class in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which the police actually were at, and they addressed the situation, and they were getting the times down from on hold from like 3.5 minutes to 2.5 minutes. And that was just being on hold. And that was a big success story for them to get it down to a 2.5 minute delay. So basically, with police staffing at all-time lows, with call volume being at all-time highs, basically this makes everybody that works in childcare and what I like to call an initial responder, because you are going to be the one that's going to be responding to that incident, to that emergency, before the first responders get there. And as you can see with the times we're talking about, oftentimes the emergency may already be over by the time the first responders do actually get there. So that's why it's so important for all of us in early childhood care to be prepared so that we can take the role of being that initial responder.
Yeah, and I mean, Sonia's mentioned it in the chat, she's got a lot of old bridges where she lives. So, if a day to day we're seeing delays in 911, now combine that with an earthquake, a tornado, a flood, a hurricane, an active shooter, those roads may not be there. So it's going to compound itself and only get worse. And I think a really important stat on here too is that 54% of parents believe that they're going to be reunited with their children within several hours. So keep that in mind. And then I want you to look at this slide, which says 41% of parents do not know what location their children would be evacuated to in case of a disaster. So right in there, you see some real, confliction between if you're going to get reunited with your kid and where it's going to happen and how long it's going to take. I will tell you, reunification of children is a major issue after any disaster. I don't care how big or small it is. In fact, if you look at kind of one of the bigger events that's happened in the last, 10, 20 years, you think about Hurricane Katrina, over 5,000 children were separated from their parents and reported missing during Hurricane Katrina. I don't know. I'll just put it out there in the chat. Feel free to type in your answer. But how long do you think it took the last child to be reunited with their parents after Hurricane Katrina? Any guesses in the chat of how long that took? 6 months, a month, 1 week? So, I mean, you'll be shocked to know, and I just want you to keep this in mind because we just talked about brain development and all that. It took almost 9 months to reunite the last child with their parents. So think about that experience that poor child went through for the last 9 months to try to get reunited with their parents. So I guess I'm here to tell you today that often neglected in emergency plans is reunification, and that's true in childcare. It's true in emergency disasters, the fire department, the police department. It's kind of an afterthought. And, as Ron mentioned, we're at staffing levels that we haven't seen really in history with first responders. They're going to be very busy responding to the disaster, trying to save lives, trying to mitigate the effects of that disaster. There's not a lot of people waiting in the wings to help out and try to do the reunification, which is a big, big deal. So just something to think about. Message that to your parents. Let them know where your evacuation point is. Let them know what your plans are for emergencies. All that kind of stuff is very important. So if you want to, just have a couple of conversation starters about your emergency preparedness efforts and your plan, there's just a couple questions you can ask your staff. You can ask your parents. You can ask your coworkers, whoever. But, do I have a plan? Where is the plan? Have I read the plan? When was the last time I read the plan? Is it an all hazards plan? Does it cover multiple different disasters or emergencies that may occur and may impact my facility? Will I stay in my facility or will I have to go somewhere and evacuate? Who makes the call on that? What's our criteria? If we do have to evacuate, where are we going to go? Do we have a signed agreement in place that would allow us to go somewhere else? We were training in a small town not too far from Washington, D.C., and basically everybody in the audience said, yeah, we got a plan. Our plan is to just go to the library. And guess what? The library is not that big. It can't handle 30 childcare programs all showing up at the same time. So having those agreements in place, having those conversations, very, very important. And also have the parents been engaged. A lot of times you'll give parents a big packet of information when they start the year, but they get overwhelmed. We know they don't read the information. It's always good to have a reminder, especially now as winter weather is coming upon us, or whatever your hazards are, if you're in the coast, a hurricane or whatnot. But take that opportunity to engage those parents, make sure you're having those conversations. And if you'd like to learn more, we're having a whole host of webinars in January. We're kicking off a whole new series called Resolve to Be Prepared in 2022. So make your New Year's resolution with us. We'll be talking about these in much greater detail on January 15th. We'll have more information on that, but you can sign up for that on our website. We really want to make sure that people have a plan, that their plan is actionable, and that people really know what to do, because it's just too darn important out there. So that's kind of one big thing I wanted to make sure that we talked about. And the other thing I really wanted to, and I'm going to lean on Ron quite a bit for this with his law enforcement background and just all the things he sees. We travel the country teaching early childhood providers how to be prepared for every kind of emergency. And Ron's on the road, gosh, almost every week. In fact, he'll be working with a lot of Native American tribes here in January. He just got back from Indiana, and he was in Michigan and West Virginia, all over the place. But the thing that kind of gets to me, the more you're out in society, my God, the more on edge everybody is. Everybody's more on edge than I've ever seen, certainly in my lifetime.
And we're hearing that from the centers, Andy. We're hearing that, these centers are saying, hey, our staff is now getting more abuse from the parents than ever. They're getting more, arguments than ever. There are more frustrations with the parents. And a lot of it is because of, maybe some of the COVID restrictions or whatever. Here's one that happened in California that made some headlines, where a parent actually attacked a teacher. Obviously, it was over a mask issue, which definitely gets people very, very excited. You can turn into violence. And so we can see this teacher ended up bleeding, cuts to hands and face, had to go to the hospital. So these are some of the things that can happen at your facility. These are some of the things that can happen when we go out into the community. So here we have, once again, kind of a couple COVID situations. We have, a triple shooting in Georgia over a mask issue that was at a convenience store, something that we may be visiting. You may be going to the grocery store. You may be going to Walmart. You may be going to a restaurant. You may be going to a bar. There's some poor guy in Minnesota that got, killed and pushed down a set of stairs and killed, broke his neck because of a social distancing incident at a local bar. So during our trainings, what we try to do is we try to obviously talk about what's going to happen in your professional life, what's going to happen when you're at your centers, what's going to happen when you're at your facility, but also let's carry that out into the real world when we're out with our family. We're out with maybe our own kids, we're out with our friends or whatever. If a situation happens, because we're seeing this basically all over the place. So we really want to be prepared both at our centers and also wherever we go outside of our centers.
Yeah, and really even more than that. I mean, we've been, we're in communication with early childhood folks every day, and at the request, a lot of these requests come in because we had conversations and people notice trends and they ask us to help address them. So I know Ron's put together a brand new course on site security, on crisis communication, and very important, to de-escalation techniques. How do you lower the temperature? How do you prevent, something crazy like this from even happening?
Yeah, and this is a good course, Andy, because we talk about the site security. We know that parents, one of the big things that they even look at when they're choosing a center is what kind of security is there? What kind of security doors do you have? Who are you letting in and out of your place? That's from the parent point of view. From the staff point of view, we talk a lot about de-escalation. And that's a word that's thrown around a lot, but really outside of law enforcement and some military people, very few people in the country ever get trained in de-escalation. But now we're in a situation where we're going to send somebody up to okay, you have to wear this mask. You can't get in here unless you stay 6 feet apart. We're actually getting into a lot of conflict management. And what we'd like to do, give you some tips about when you do get that angry parent, what can we do to de-escalate this so it doesn't turn into a violent encounter? And this has been a course that's been very well received because, like I said, most people never ever get the chance to take some sort of training in this. And they really don't even know what to do, even some of the simple things that we could teach them.
Yeah, and I will say site security, it's hard to find anything that's been good with COVID.
Right.
But I will say, I guess one of the things you could say that has been good is that, throughout our travels, childcare programs are more locked down than ever. And gosh, I wish that that's something that's going to stick around, because it would prevent so many acts of violence and so many unnecessary encounters, and really just bolster security all day long. But we've seen it can be done with COVID, because you're not letting a lot of people in. So I hope we don't quickly get away from that as we move past COVID at some point.
Well, and what we've seen is that most places, the staff is happy that the doors are now locked, and without people wandering around, at pickup and drop off time. However, I will say, I have only been to one place recently that now has reopened their doors again. They figure, well, okay, we're past the big COVID push, which I don't know that it really ever has ended, but now we've reopened our doors. But everybody else is like, no, we agree with you. We're going to keep those doors secured, which is really what we like to see.
Well, and I think a big part of that door security is that the sad fact is, whether you look in America, you look in Canada, you really look anywhere, crime is up, and it's not just up a little bit. I mean, it's up across the board, and it's up in all categories. And I was looking, online just to kind of, I think everybody kind of does a gut check and says, well, is it, it can never happen here, right? That's what everybody says. Not in my backyard, it doesn't happen here. But my gosh, if you just take a look at some of the headlines, and I put a whole bunch of them here, but I mean, gosh, from sea to shining sea, as they would say, crime and violence and everything. Even our friends up in Canada have got violence at an all-time high.
Yeah, and the Canadians are a little more fortunate than we are down in the United States here, because they have a little less crime than we do. But we could throw statistics at you all day long, but we all know that violent crime and all kinds of crime has definitely increased. Just look at some of these headlines we have here. It's all across the nation. It's just not in one area. It's just not over here. It's just not over there. It's all over the place. And basically what we've done is we've kind of created this perfect storm where we have people all dealing with COVID frustrations for endless months on end. We have mental health issues that are totally on the rise. We have police departments that have either been defunded or are short-staffed because of early retirements or people just leaving the field. So we basically have created this, this perfect storm for violence and crime to take over, and that's why it's more important for us than ever to kind of really know how to protect ourselves and to protect, the kids that we have in our care.
Yeah, and Heidi's asking, how can we change this? Well, I think that's a whole nother webinar series on that, Heidi. But I think one of the disturbing trends, and I know, Ron, you've been tracking this very closely, but it's not just kind of those acts of violence that may be adult versus adult. Sometimes it bleeds over into kids, and maybe not even willingly, but sometimes kids get involved, like what we're seeing here with these cars being stolen.
Yeah, and Andy, as many places I've been to, I don't think I've really ever been to a facility, whether it be large facility, small facility, big city, rural, in the middle of nowhere, whatever, where there hasn't been some incident that has taken place in their parking lot. Whether it be, a mom got her purse stolen out of her car, whether it be a car theft. Unfortunately, what we're seeing now is like, a ridiculous number of carjackings. And when these guys come, to get your car, they're not looking in the back seat to see if you have a younger child in there or a dog in there or whatever. So a lot of these kids are being taken, not because they want to kidnap the child, they want the car, and the kid just happens to be in the car. Now, a lot of these, once the bad guy realizes that, oh, wait a minute, I've got Junior in the back seat here, it ends rather quickly. But I did track all of these 17, which occurred in 1 month, and this month was actually in March, that we got from kids in cars. And a couple of these incidents lasted for over 4 hours. San Francisco had, brother and sister taken. The sister was 4 years old. The brother was 1 year old. They were gone for in excess of 4 hours. So you can imagine the angst and the frustration and the nervousness and the despair that the parents, and the facility and the police all went through trying to find this vehicle. Now the vehicle is secondary, really. Who cares? But you've got my kids in there. So we're starting to see a lot of this happen. And like I said, I don't think I've really ever honestly been to a place where there hasn't been something that has happened in the parking lot. They There's always something there. That's why we kind of encourage people, if you can have cameras in your parking lot, let your parents know about things, to be a little bit more aware. It certainly helps a lot.
Well, and all of this really talks to being aware of what's going on around you, making sure that you're engaging in your world, making sure that you have really your eye on the prize. And that's one of the big things that we talk about. We have a whole course actually focused on situational awareness and looking at how do you increase your visibility? How do you increase your understanding of those threats in your world? How do you really just become overall better prepared and plugged in to your surroundings? I know this is one of your favorite courses to teach, but when we think about some specific examples, let's look at some ways you could increase situational awareness in your facility.
Yeah, well, there certainly is. And one of the things we talk about, in the situational awareness class, and just to expand on what Andy said, this was a part of our active shooter training that we used for many years. And it got to be such a big topic and large topic, we made it into a standalone course, and which has really helped out people. But some of the tips we give in that class are definitely, be aware of activity in your area. I mean, sometimes things are going to happen in your area that you should know about at your facility. Are you hearing a bunch of sirens? Are you seeing a bunch of police activity? Are you seeing things that are out of the ordinary? Police helicopters, possibly if you live in a metropolitan area. We were working with a provider out in the Baltimore area, and he happened to be by a bank that was continually being robbed, and he didn't have to be notified by the police that there was a bank robbery over there, because he now could pick up on the signals that, whoa, I know something's happening. Let's get the kids back inside. There's a bank robber on the loose. That means the police are going to be here. There's a potential for a hostage situation, a potential for a shootout or whatever. So he was able to pick up on the keys, just from his experiences, what was out of the ordinary. Also, we talked about parking lots. I just mentioned the parking lots with the carjacking. But even if we don't have a carjacking, we should be watching these parking lots. Are there cars out there that are occupied? Why would they be occupied? Are they out there for long periods of time, whether occupied or unoccupied? That's kind of strange. Who are these people? That's time to call the police. Let the police come check out. Why are you sitting in my parking lot for all this time? Do we have out-of-state plate cars out there? Sometimes we get these parents that, do not have custody issues any longer, and they come. We had one situation where the lady drove from California all the way to Kansas to try to get her daughter, which she had no custodial issues with any longer. So we had to be on the lookout for that type of things. Playgrounds. We should be careful when we take our kids out from the playgrounds. Is there somebody hanging around out there that shouldn't probably be there? Is there somebody there for long periods of time? Is there somebody that every day gets a little bit closer to us, trying to see us, maybe take pictures of us? Something doesn't fit the area. And sex offenders, we should all be aware of sex offenders that are in our area, whether it be at our facilities or at our houses. Is it cause for alarm? No, not really. But is it cause for awareness? Yes, we should be aware of these people. And, Andy and I have worked at many facilities where they'll just go online, because every state has a registry for sex offenders. They'll post their pictures right at the desk and warn people that, hey, if you see this person hanging out of our facility, in our parking lot, by our playground, be aware, let's contact the police and have the situation taken care of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we also recognize that, a lot of programs have home visiting components where you go out and you visit people in their homes, or you do child welfare checks or those types of things. So again, as a call from the field, as it were, we've developed a whole course on staying safe during home visits. So if you're a program that offers those types of services and you make house calls and go out, we've got a whole great program put together on ways you can increase your safety, conducting the visit, at the visit, after the visit, all that kind of stuff. We're basically just trying to stay as aware as possible and making sure people are as safe as possible.
And Andy, I hear so many stories from every time I teach this class from the participants that are in the class about things that have happened to them. I mean, crazy situations. And the thing is, we all learn from how did they handle that? What did they do? How did they prevent this from happening again for maybe themselves or for other people? So it's been a real fun experience teaching this class for sure.
Well, so let's turn to kind of a sad topic. And I did note that there was some, conversation in the chat that largely Canada has been immune to active shooter events. But sadly, we can't say that anymore. They've had, at least a couple now, and the deadliest one in Canadian history. And it's obviously a problem here in the United States. We were talking about this when COVID first started about, usually historically in the United States, after you go on a break, you see a tremendous uptick in violence and active shooter situations. And our fear has been and continues to be, as schools begin to reopen, we just don't know what's been going on in the online environment, what kind of bullying, what kind of conversations, what kind of mental trauma kids may be having. And sadly, we're starting to see some of that play out here in the United States. And again, our friends up north have seen some of this now too.
Yeah, and Andy, you kind of picked out 3 incidents here that happened in the States. We had the Nebraska Mall. That was a situation that actually a confrontation began at the pretzel stand of all things. So some patrons they didn't actually go in there to do an active shooter event. They just got mad at each other with a confrontation at the pretzel stand, and it ended up into a mall shooting. And one of the things that we take away from there was a lot of the shoppers there that didn't even know each other. They ran and hid together in a bathroom. Okay, so we talk about that in our class. Is that a good place to go, a bad place to go, or maybe, is there a different response that we could have taken? The Idaho Mall one, we see the same thing. This was a guy that walked around this mall in Idaho for 40 minutes, openly carrying a rifle, and nobody called 911. He's dressed in black. He's walking around for 40 minutes. Nobody even confronts him until finally he was confronted by a security person. Then shots started firing, and the sheriff will tell you, a lot of people were saved that day because of the decisions they made and the actions they took, which is good because this is what we really want to do. We talked about this earlier. We want to do things that you can use not only at your facility, but you can use outside when you're in the real world with your own family and yourself. And then, of course, we have the Oxford school shooting, which just happened very, very recently. And one of the lessons that were learned there is that, and there's even a video of this that probably many have seen where it shows kids inside of the room with a knock on the door with a person saying, they're the police, open the door. The kids didn't buy into it. They thought that it was the shooter. So they reacted appropriately, did not open the door. Since then, now there's, the police are saying, well, actually it wasn't one of our detectives, but, they still acted properly. And we showed this, we talk about this a lot with Sandy Hook, because basically a whole classroom full of kids was saved because that's exactly what the teacher would have done. She kept her kids calm and she wouldn't open the door when there was a knock on the door by somebody saying the police were there.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, and of course, Sandy Hook did just have an anniversary, and those are only really hard. I mean, those are hard anniversaries to go with, and it's just it's so sad as folks are saying in the chat as well. So one of the things again that we always are looking at is, are we meeting the needs of the field, and that's really our job at the Institute. So this is a peer-reviewed publication that I wrote a couple of years ago, looking at surveys of early childhood professionals, those that work in big centers and those that work out of their home. Are we prepared for certain types of disasters? And you can see fire, no big mystery there. Everybody requires fire drills and stuff like that. So we're pretty prepared as an industry for fires. What really caught my eye and my attention is if you go down to the bottom about active shooter, boy, oh boy, we're not prepared at all. In fact, the majority of us said, we're not prepared at all for this. So that's really what led to the development of our active shooter course. I'm very proud of the work that we've done on this course. It is the only course that's been developed specifically for early childhood professionals. And we've consulted with a whole bunch of wonderful experts. I mean, Walt Disney Corporation and Sesame Street and all of the big learning organizations, the big chains and everybody else. In total, we've trained over 100,000 childcare providers on active shooter response. And I know there's other organizations that do this kind of work, but the other organizations, and even Ron is an ALICE instructor, but I think he'll be the first to tell you, ALICE doesn't understand the unique environment, the nuances of early childhood that we go through. It's a heck of a lot different being a high school student or a college student or just working an office job versus the challenges that we face every day caring for little babies, infants, toddlers, etc. So we've obviously, been doing this for quite a while. We've got a book published on the topic, but this is really a course that we give a lot. And sadly, with everything going on, it's, continues to be one of our most popular offerings as well.
And I will say, Andy, we basically make it not a scary training for people to take. We don't try to use scare techniques. We don't bring in blank ammunition. We don't shoot people with pellet guns.
True.
We don't hurt people. So we don't want people to walk away being more fearful than they were before we started. Our goal is to make people just the opposite. We want you to feel comfortable that, hey, I know how to do this. And our philosophy has always been that we can teach you how to respond with a fire without you actually starting the building on fire. We have enough techniques, teaching skills that we're able to do that. And I like the way we have made it to the early childhood. I mean, I remember the very first class we did probably 6 years ago was in Arlington, Virginia, right outside by the Pentagon. And one of the first questions we got was, well, okay, how do I keep my kids quiet? And I looked at Andy, I'm thinking, I'm the copper here. Don't you people know how to do this? I'm thinking of this, but these are the types of things that we really, have kind of tailored it to, because it's all the things that we've learned through all of our experiences of working with, like I say, probably 100,000 people or more.
Yeah. And that's really why our tagline is don't be scared, be prepared. Nobody's going to learn anything. At least they're not going to learn much if they're sitting there frightened the whole time. So doing things in a calm environment, in a controlled environment, in a safe environment to us is very important. And at the end of the day, we're going to do a couple of scenarios. We're going to try some things. But you know what? If you fail, I want you to fail during practice, during our drills. That's what we do drills for. That's why we do exercises and practice. I don't want you to fail in the real world. So, just something about kind of our philosophy. Again, it's a little bit different. We're not out there to traumatize anybody. And certainly we want to make things as easy as possible for folks. And I saw a couple people in the chat talking about how do you message this to kids? How do you let kids know about drills? We've actually tried to put out some resources for that too. So these are all free resources. They're available on our website. We partnered with a wonderful group called Autism's Little Learners, and we made these social stories. And these are social stories that you can download on our website. You can print them out. And, before you do the fire drill, before you do the evacuation drill, before you have a tornado or a hurricane, you can talk to these and message these to kids in a way that's really age appropriate. They're stories, they've got pictures, they explain it. And the same thing with the active shooter approach that we take. We don't ever want to say the words active shooter within earshot of a child. Childhood is fragile. Kids need to be kids, right? We got to be kids. So let's not, expose them to trauma and violence and stuff unnecessarily. And that includes the way that we do our drills. So we actually have Bees to a Beehive, which talks about the active shooter response, but we have a fun time with it. We play a game called Bees to the Beehive, and we're the bees and we buzz to our beehive, which is our hiding spot. So, it's those kind of approaches that we embrace, that we appreciate, that are really developed, because of everybody in the field. So it's for the field, by the field, so to speak. But that's really what we're all about. In the same vein, we have a whole host of free trainings on our website. We have actually got a couple new ones that are going to be coming probably next month. One's on food allergies, and one is on teaching young children how to use sign language. So I just saw the rough videos on that yesterday. I'm very excited for those. But these are some that are up there now, and they cover a wide variety of topics, everything from selecting and installing the right kind of car seat, all the way to learning from an active shooter survivor. Lacey Newman was in Las Vegas, the deadliest active shooter event in United States history. At the music festival, she got shot. How did she respond? How did she survive? How did she message everything that happened to her 5-year-old son? So we go into great detail. We do all of this to try to make everybody as safe as possible. And I hope you do take advantage of some of the great resources that we have on our website.
And the Lacey Newman one, if I may add, Andy, is so good because not only does it give us a perspective that we rarely see from somebody who has participated in and survived an active shooter event, a huge one that was out in Las Vegas, but it also shows you the perspective of what her own child played in her survival, her will to live, and also how the aftermath, how she progressed afterwards and how she helped her child progress afterwards, even from talking to her her child's school teachers right on down the road. So it gives you a real different perspective, and certainly from an early childhood perspective, it really gives you an inside look at how she handled it with her own child.
Yeah, and we're constantly updating our blog and our Facebook page and all that kind of fun stuff as well. So, this online learning stuff, it's been a great way to connect with folks that we would never otherwise get to come in contact with. And I saw folks from Saudi Arabia and India and all sorts of crazy places I hope to visit someday on the chat. But one of the things I think we miss is that we don't have those opportunities to kind of have those discussions at the break, before class, after class, et cetera. So one of the things I'd really be curious to is looking at the stoplight and kind of reflecting upon yourself, and I know we haven't had a lot of time. But we have a lot of other courses and resources, and we're always around if you need us. But I'd like you to kind of have some self-reflection and think about one thing that you're going to stop doing as a result of today's webinar, one thing you'd like to learn more about, and one thing that you're going to start doing as a result of the little bit of time we've spent today. And if you're so inclined, I'd love to see you put in the chat, what's one topic, what's one thing that you want to learn more about? Because again, all of our work, all of our courses, everything that we do is really driven by you guys and what you do every day and what you need. Nobody expects you to be active shooter experts. Nobody expects you to be firefighters or police officers. But, we work in that space that is a translation services. So you tell us what we need, we'll get it for you. We'll break it down into very simple, easy to understand pieces and make it relevant to childcare by providing concrete examples, templates, those types of things. So if you can put that in the box, it helps us out, and we'll develop some courses as a result of that. Also, we're coming up on the new year. Very, very excited. We're making our New Year's resolutions. And one of the things we want to do is resolve to be more prepared in 2022. And we have just a wonderful opportunity for everybody on the webcast here today. We're doing a series of 5 courses in January. Many of the courses we've chatted about today: situational awareness, the de-escalation course, home visiting safety, emergency preparedness, and active shooter. And a special deal for you guys on the webinar: you can do 3 webinars for $45. You can do all 5 for $75 if you're so inclined. Or if you only want to do 1 or 2, they're $19 a piece. So, very, very cheap. We're not trying to, profit off this. We're just covering our costs of supply, equipment, and time and stuff. But I hope that you'll join us and resolve to be more prepared in 2022. So with that, I think we got about 9 or 10 minutes left, and I've been trying to keep a good eye on the chat and see what everybody's chatting about. We do have some of our programming available in Spanish. I did see that come in. So check our website. We do have some of the on-demand courses in Spanish. But Ron and I have got some time. I see Maddie's back. Let's talk about some questions and stuff. Huh, Maddie?
Thank you so much, Andy and Ron. As much as a lot of that information was, of course, a little bit hard to swallow, it is just so important for all of us who are caring for one of the most vulnerable populations. Before we just dive into our Q&A really quickly, quite a few questions came in. I am going to go ahead and I'm actually going to share my screen if that's okay. Andy, I'll pop us onto the Q&A slide for some wrap-up information. I will give you a couple minutes. Take a glass of water, take a breath. You just shared so much with us. While I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and launch our poll into the chat. We're quite curious, what does your center do right now in case of an emergency? What is your plan if something like what Andy and Ron spoke to us about today? What is your plan if that were to happen? Do you have to send messages one at a time to each parent via text, via email? Or are you able to use a system like Hi Mama where you can message every single family at multiple senders all on the click of a button? So we're quite curious, what do you do? Do you have an emergency plan? Do you message families individually, or are you able to message all your families at once? If you would like to learn more about how using Hi Mama can support you in these situations for mass parent communication, Kaya can post another link in the chat about how to get in contact with us over here at Hi Mama to support you in those situations. I will leave that poll up for now, and I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen again, and we'll pop into a quick Q&A. Give me a moment as it loads up for us here. As my Q&A slide is loading though, so we can maximize all of our time, Andy and Ron, I'll dive into one of the first questions we got, which we'd love to know if you have any kind of concrete tips you can leave us with today about the best way of communicating with young children during one of those emergency situations. Any tips on how to help children stay calm and comfortable?
Sure, no, absolutely. And I think, the biggest thing is kind of what Ron said, is making sure our adults, our staff are prepared and know what to do. That's going to allow us to be a lot more calm, cool, and collective. And, with that, those children are going to be able to draw from that strength. As Ron kind of mentioned, if you're crying or screaming or yelling or don't know what to do, everybody here knows children are very, very perceptive, and they're going to pick up on that. They're going to feed from your fear. They're going to feed off that energy. So the more we can, be prepared and be confident about our responses, because we have written our plan, we have exercised our plan, we have made revisions to our plan, we know our plan works, that's going to be really helpful. And I will say part of our plan is making sure you have the appropriate tools and resources ready to go. So, I normally would not advocate giving out lollipops to kids on a daily basis. But hey, I tell you what, if I'm in an emergency and I need kids to be quiet in a pretty quick period of time, I might start handing out some candy, lollipop, suckers, or whatever. Is it ideal? Probably not, but I'm going to do all I can do in that situation to try to occupy those children and make them be as quiet as I possibly can. So stuff like that, I think is good to know. What else do you think?
Well, and you also try to make it as fun as we can be. Andy mentioned earlier, we don't say active shooter training. Active shooter sounds kind of scary even to adults. So we've used other names like Beast or the Beehive, Cat and Mouse, things like that. Basically what we're doing is everything is kind of like a hide and seek game. So with kids all know how to play hide and seek. And there's two things you have to do to win the game. You have to have a good hiding spot. And then the more important thing is you have to be quiet. And kids, you can ask the littlest kids, and usually girls are good with this. And I go, oh, Andy, he's no good at hide and seek. He's got good hiding spots, but he talks all the time. So you kind of make it fun for the kids. And think about it. We're asking kids now to do things that they probably wanted to do all school year, but weren't allowed to. But now we're saying, okay, now you can do it. You can move furniture. You can climb through a window. You can run over here. You can hide over here. You can stay in the dark. And also another thing, speaking of dark, know your kids. We were at a place, also was here in Virginia, where everybody knew that if they took one little girl into a darkened room, she was going to cry. And it wasn't that she was afraid of a fire, it wasn't she was afraid of an active shooter, she was afraid of the dark. So every staff member in there knew that, so they had to come up with some techniques to get her comfortable into the dark. That's stuff you can do well and in hand until finally she's comfortable with that. So these are the types of things. It's just really practice and make it fun for the kids. And how many times have we heard that, kids, the first time they do fire drills, and you guys see this because you're the first ones to do with them, they may be terrified during a fire drill. Matter of fact, we talked to one guy, he was a fireman, I believe. And he was saying, the first day of school, his kid was petrified when they did a fire drill. And now the teachers are calling up and say, Johnny, he's leading the charge. Now he's the one taking charge. He loves these fire drills. So the more they do it, the more they're comfortable with it, the less scary it's going to be for them. And it's just practice, really.
Right, absolutely. So it kind of sounds like the most important thing to take away from that is prioritizing our ability to know what to do in that situation to help us stay calm so we can help them.
And we always tell people, do not even think of doing a drill with the kids until your staff is 110% good with what their roles are going to be. Because if you bring the kids in right away, you're asking for a catastrophe, really. So there's really no need for that. Just do it with your staff. And that's why when we do our trainings, we work with the staff individually so they're comfortable, let them practice it before they bring in the kids. That's definitely the first step.
Absolutely. That's amazing. And it sounds like in these situations, of course, we all have to work together as the adults protecting the children when these emergencies are happening. Do you have any tips for centers or directors where there might not be great partnerships within the center? I know that can be a big struggle in a lot of centers.
Yeah, and quite honestly, we see this a lot in programs that have shared spaces. A A lot of times we go in and the childcare is in one part of the building, but they don't own the building. So therefore they don't have access to really critical systems like the fuse box. If the power goes out, can you even get to the fuse box, or can you turn the water off if there's a leak? Things like that. I guess kind of what I've found throughout my career is that people come together because of a common enemy, right?
Mhm.
So if you can make a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, an active shooter your enemy, well, now you have something in common. And at the end of the day, we've got a pretty good bargaining chip because we're truly doing this to protect the kids. And who wants to be kind of left out or seen as the meanie who doesn't want to cooperate and could put all these kids at risk? So I would say try to find some common ground, find a quote unquote common enemy, make it an emergency, a threat, a disaster that could face your program, and see if you can, come at it from that angle.
Or another thing, Maddie, if this is going to be an internal matter among staff people that work in the same facility,
Mhm.
I always tell people, know your personnel. Because there's going to be some staff members that no, I'm not getting involved with any of this fighting stuff or barricading. So you better know that ahead of time and give them a job that they can do, whether that be, okay, well, you take the kids and take the kids over in safety and keep the kids quiet. That's a good role for you. Where other ones, I mean, they just want to beat the tar out of whoever's coming in that building. So you got to kind of know the different mindsets people come from. I mean, I got to tell you, I was scared to death in a school I was just in West Virginia not too long ago, that I was afraid I was going to get beat up before I left there. I was just teaching a class. So God forbid anybody that breaks into there and tries to harm anybody, because that was a group of fighters over there. And good for them. I mean, good for them. That's, you need people like that, but know your people and what roles they can do for you. It's better to find that out now during practice than find it out during a real event.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just like thinking as you go through these answers, I'm sure a lot of educators don't know how they're going to react until the situation happens. So being as prepared as possible and honest about your strengths within your team and where you're going to need to rely on someone else will be so important. Well, Andy and Ron, thank you so much for all that critical information you shared with us. It is 3:00 on the dot. Do you have any last words or words of wisdom you want to share before we wrap up?
Well, I'd like to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, everybody. And thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's always
Thank
great
you
to
so
be with
much.
everybody. Thank you so much. Stay safe out there, and we hope we'll see you in 2022. Should be a great year, we hope.
Thank you so much, Andy and Ron. Have some wonderful holidays.
Thank you, guys.
Before we finally wrap up today's webinar, thank you so much to everyone for being here. As a reminder, we will be sending out the show notes and the recording, so you will have your recording of today's webinar, you'll have the slides, and you will have your certificate by early next week. So just keep an eye out on an email from me then. And we will be having our last webinar of 2021 next Thursday, December 23rd. Is all about self-care for the early childhood educator and leader in the classroom. It'll be a wonderful webinar to help us calm our bodies and minds as we head into the holidays. So I really hope to see you all there. Lastly, don't forget to sign up for our free activities. We will send out new activities to you every week, right to your inbox for you to do in your classroom, at your center, even to send to the parents to use at home. And definitely don't miss out on those activities. Kaya can post a link to those in the chat as well, and they're on our website. Thank you so much to all of you for spending time with us today. We are a few minutes over. We appreciate each and every one of you being here, and have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you. Bye, everybody.